When it comes to technology in education, there are many problems and as many solutions. The next panel on using technology to supplement classroom instruction and spark joy of learning will discuss and deliberate on these problems and solutions, and the panel will be moderated by Pushpa Thantry.
Pushpa heads the math resource team at Akshara. She worked in IBM for 17 years in various capacities. She took a break and joined the Teach for India Fellowship in 2015. At Akshara, Pushpa is responsible for scaling the Ganita Kalika Andolana to other states and has led the design and development of Building Blocks, which is a math learning app by Akshara, and it is deployed in Diksha. So please take it from here, Pushpa.
Thank you, Shilpashri and Veena. So I'll introduce the panel. It's my pleasure to be the moderator for this panel. Firstly, I would like to introduce Azeez. Azeez started his career as a management consultant at McKinsey & Company before moving to Pratham, not-for-profit organization. He managed $8 million portfolio and a team of 1,200 employees at Pratham before co-founding Rocket Learning in 2020. Azeez is an alum of IIT Delhi and Harvard Business School, a Goldsmith Fellow and Education Innovation Fellow. He's been honored with Rajendra Malhotra Memorial Prize. In 2021, DRK Foundation nominated him as the Social Entrepreneur. Business World added him at the 40 under 40 disruptor list, and Microsoft awarded him the Microsoft Global Social Entrepreneur title. Azeez also serves on the Indian government's Early Childhood Care and Education Task Force and UNESCO's core group. It's good to have you, Azeez, with us today. Please come in and take your seat, please. Next, I would like to introduce Ebi. Ebenezer Vidyasagar, shortly called as Ebi, works at Texas Instrument in Bengaluru, India, as a Senior Director, IT Solutions team. With his 20 years of product development across hardware and software on a global scale, he has been a volunteer of Vibha since 2005, when he and Viv, his spouse, started the Vibha Houston chapter. Moving to Bangalore in 2010, he has been an active member of the Vibha Bengaluru Action Center. He has been instrumental in starting the Vibha Dream Mile Bengaluru edition, which has been a premier fundraising event for Vibha in Bengaluru for the last 12 years. Ebi is an active runner and enjoys running half marathons. Welcome to you, Ebi, and I would request you to come to this dais, please. Next, I would like to introduce Prasanna. Prasanna is the CEO of Sikshana Foundation and has been with the foundation since 2007 and is a leading team of passionate people to help government institutions deliver quality service to the public. He has also designed and developed several software systems which are powering various programs of the government, an avid sports person who is into ultra marathons, a self-taught musician who plays guitar and drums, is a techie to the core who still codes at every available opportunity. Prior to Sikshana, Prasanna worked as a software engineer in various companies in the US before becoming the founder and CEO of SoftTrends Incorporation in USA, which he ran for 10 years before moving back to India. He is a master in computer engineering from Texas A&M University. Good to have you, Prasanna, with us. Please join us in the class. Thank you, all of you, for joining us today. So first, I would like to say, when we say about EdTech, there are many puzzle pieces in the whole of the spectrum. And technology, we say, can accelerate the learning, and that we've seen during the pandemic, right? Where and we've also seen the unreadiness of ourselves during the pandemic of how we could quickly adopt and accelerate this. But whatever resistance that we have of including technology in education, I think it's in the past now. And now we have it is going to stay here, and whatever it is, we have to use technology to accelerate growth for our teacher capacity building or for children or managing systems in the departments, right? So in this context, first I would like to ask you, Azeez, what problem are you solving in this puzzle piece, and what is the solution, and how are you measuring the metrics when it comes to the solution, right? So just talk about your product and the solution.
Sure, sure. So at Rocket Learning, we call ourselves an edtech nonprofit, right? And I have to make very clear normally that we are educators coming to technology rather than the other way around, because most educators hate technologists. There's this big resistance to saying that, technology will be a silver bullet and will solve everything. You give some tablet and then everyone will learn, right? So, and I agree, and we agree with that, right? We think that's not the way that education happens, especially for low-income students who have so many challenges around them, their families, their teachers. So what we actually do is to try and combine the community aspect of learning, teaching with aided by technology, right? So that's the focus for us. We work with 3 to 8-year-old children across multiple states in India in partnership with government systems, and the focus is on early childhood education for preschool and in early primary grades on teaching foundational literacy and numeracy. And overall, the model that we do is that we use WhatsApp to get simple audiovisual content out to parents as well as Anganwadi workers across the country. These activities, in fact, the content that we send out is not intended for children to see and automatically learn from. It's actually digital content that is triggering physical activities, action, play, games, rhymes, etc. So how it works is that, for example, an Anganwadi worker will create a WhatsApp group of 10 parents of the children. And in fact, we don't distribute tablets. We don't ask for a fancy app to get downloaded. We sort of say that, many parents now, 60 to 70% of parents, even in government schools in India, have a smartphone with WhatsApp. So we say that, we create a WhatsApp group of the parents, and on those, we are on, some 70,000 such WhatsApp groups today across the country, with around 1 million children on those groups. And we say, and we use technology to send content to those groups in partnership with the teachers who have created the group in the first place. These are simple 1-2 minute videos that help the parent to do activities at home with whatever they have around them. So these are localized, contextualized. Things like, for example, mix 4 different kinds of pulses in a bowl and ask your child to split that into different bowls, right? Something very simple that teaches them sorting and, is the base for then cognitive learning and numerical ability going forward. And then we ask the parent to take a photo or video of that and send it back on the group. And so this is a model that's centered around peer effects, that one parent sends it, then the other parent sees it and gets motivated, etc. By the teacher as a facilitator, because she is on that group seeing what's happening and can then respond actively. And then we also actually use that data that we get, right, to be able to send behavioral nudges, messages, certificates, medals, report cards, all digitally to these parents and children as well to motivate them. Right, we send a report card with a smiley for the day when they send back a response to us. And then the child asks, how many smileys did I get last week out of 7 possible smileys? So that's the model that we use. Now we're also using that to help Anganwadi workers improve instruction in classrooms. So send every day 2 2-minute videos saying this is a new type of story that you can recite, or this is a different game, right? And we see that teachers, especially who may not have been well trained, may be able to do 10 things very well, but if they can expand their repertoire to 30 or 40 or 50 things, then that sort of improves it. So that's a little bit about what we do. We measure progress in terms of parental and teacher confidence, know-how, and attitude. That's the first step, and then that leads to student learning outcomes. So we actually do baseline and inline assessments. We're doing some randomized control evaluations, etc. as well, with the idea being to see that if parents or teachers are even spending 30 minutes at home or in the classroom with the child, doing simple activities that are guided by technology, then can we see that difference? And we are seeing substantial difference, 20 to 30 percentage points in 6 to 12 months in student learning. So I hope I've covered most of what you said,
Yes,
and
thank you so much.
Thank you for the question.
Yeah. So next I would like to come to Prasanna. Prasanna, you've been working with the government for like nearly 20 years now, I think, right? So you've seen it all, like early adoption of Karnataka government of using technology in whatever form. It could be a basic infrastructure, and pre-pandemic, and then now post-pandemic, right? And you've also institutionalized certain things working with the government. So I would like you to talk about what has been the adoption pre and post-pandemic, if I may say, and what has been your experience in learning, working with the government and institutionalizing technology within the DNA of the government at various levels, right?
Yeah, so when actually I came into this sector in 2007, so Sikshana was already there, but I was a donor to Sikshana before I actually decided to come back and join Sikshana and start running it.
Okay.
But 2005 or even early 4, department had already started using a database. I think Karnataka was at the forefront of using technology for school monitoring purposes mainly. But at least that thing was there. There was a cell, technology cell was there inside SSK, and then all of these things were happening. So when we came, I mean, when you talk about classroom, using technology in a classroom, for whatever reason, I, and along with my colleagues in Sikshana Foundation, we decided, most of us being techies, we will ensure that we will not take any tech product inside the classroom for enabling children to learn, especially because we were in rural schools. And I'm talking 2007 where nothing was existing. But we couldn't help it, and we took actually laptops to school. And 128 primary schools in Kanakpura, each school had a laptop. This was just to counter the one laptop per child thing, saying that one laptop per school is more efficient rather than one. Anyway, my thing was like, so this is how my journey started. But there were other NGOs who had actually put in a lot of infrastructure in the schools. And the way the kids were using those, definitely I agree with Azeez, that is not the way to learn. And it was actually making more damage to the child than actually, them learning anything. So that was also an observation which, and so in terms of learning in a classroom, there was not much of any investment by the department in the early years, those days. But when it came to high school, the department started installing computer labs. And in the ratio of 8, multiples of 8, depending on the strength of the school, a whole bunch of desktop systems. But unfortunately, again, these are not connected to the internet. So what you could do with those was very limited, and they all being Ubuntu, it was not familiar to most of the students. So there was a lot of challenges that they were facing. But again, credit to the department, they ran a very good training program called TALP. Under that system, they trained a whole bunch of high school teachers, used a lot of open source. So we were glad to be part of that movement because we had experimented with a whole bunch of open source tools, which were very effective for high school learning, like simple stellarium if you're teaching geography or all of these things. And so these things have actually gone on into the, so high school and above I think was fairly okay when it came to technology, but primary schools was one, there was nothing existing as per on the government side. So what happened during the pandemic, it really hit them really hard at that point because there is nothing existing and the teachers are also not trained and all of these things happened. And suddenly when most private schools jumped into remote classes, and government had to do something about it, and they jumped in and did a whole series of either YouTube classes and all that. But again, how will the students consume it? If they have one smartphone, it's typically with one parent, and they would go out to work, and there is no access to it during that time. They even used DD channel to do the same thing, but again, that was also limited because of the timing issue and all of that. So there was a lot of challenges that were happening. But that was not being, I feel, rightly addressed because again, lack of expertise and in that sense of how do we handle this. So at the same time, we were working in Gram Panchayats, libraries, helping the RDPR department to enable them to monitor library usage of books using our software. So because we have developed, as you said earlier, over the years I have developed quite a bit of system level software for the education, not just education department, for other departments like health during COVID time. All of these things are happening. So I was able to leverage that code base into this and we were helping. And then I started seeing a lot of kids actually coming into these libraries during those school hours. When the schools were closed, Gram Panchayat libraries open, students were there. And the YouTube channel was showing something as nobody was watching. And so basically I could see that full disconnect that was happening at that point in time. So I thought, okay, again, instead of doing one, there were a lot of people who were trying to address this by giving one smartphone to one child. I mean, and the challenge is huge. Like Ashok was talking about 250 million children, it's not possible realistically. So we thought, why not we create a digital device library inside these libraries itself and use that as a platform for that. So we pumped in, and currently we have close to 1,500 Gram Panchayats in Karnataka, which is completely digital library setup is there. And there, all the content is there. There's an Android TV again, which broadcasts this. So for group learning is there. For individual learning, there are 4 smartphones or a Chromebook that they can use, all controlled by a Google parental control. So it's very, conducive environment and all. So basically, I think all of these things happen. But there is one other challenge, I think, which we found during this time was that all this video content is very difficult to push it to the device at the last mile, because even 4G, forget 4G, 2G, Edge, all these things were there at that point, end point. So 30-minute video classroom instruction is just, you cannot pump it in. And most of the videos created were just a teacher standing and talking. Lecture mode, right? So there is a lot of things that we had to learn. So during that time, we kind of came up with an innovation of using a bunch of images of that classroom session with audio, complete track, and split it up, push it to the devices, and there stitch it back up to give that kind of a thing. So, but that really started working because like a 100 MB video could be compressed to 10. So that kind of, so I think there is a lot of learning. We all learned. Even I had no idea that it can be so difficult to download such big videos. But while creating, we all get enthused about how much a child can learn looking at all these images. So anyway, I think it's been a wonderful experience because all along the government has been with us. The department has been working with us, especially in Karnataka, where we are co-developing all of these, like as Akshara has been doing with all your products. So we are very lucky in that sense that the government is very open here and hoping to see more kids can be reached through this digital means, because now it is no longer an option. Yeah. There is so much more learning can happen using the multimedia, this content, and so that's how we have been progressing.
Thank you, Prasanna. We'll come back to you later. Abhi, today you are representing the donor community, okay? I hate to put you on the spot, but still. So what we, and I think even Sikshana shares the same, feelings, and most of us who are NGOs here, what appeals mostly is supply side of the things, like what Ashok was saying, like it could be a laptop I'll give you, I'll create a computer lab, and that is EdTech, So, and that one-time funding will solve all the problems in education, right? So, what has the lens changed now? Because now over the years that giving things is no longer, we know that it only works for short term, right? So we have to make it sustainable. We have to make the giving world also think that there's more beyond just giving a laptop or providing for one facility there. It is a long-term sustainable investment, right? And like you've seen, the problems are very different, right? When you talk about the last mile connectivity, you need to create a solution. So what I would have estimated initially, that pilot will just fall flat when I go to a village and implement that program, right? So what would you advise, and what would you look at this solution of using technology to the last mile, and the donor's lens perhaps changing post this conversation, or after this?
Yeah. I'm sorry, but I'll break up the answer in like a couple of three parts actually. So you bring up a very good point, right? In terms of from a donor community, the easiest was to write a check. The easiest is write a check, and I'm happy, or I take a selfie when I'm donating the money with a big check or whatever it is, or the lab inauguration. That is easy. But the key piece, and I think that's where the change is happening, whenever there is a proposal that comes in, there is still a lot of dialogue. Now, there are three things that is being, and this is my view, or this is an organization that I'm involved with, even with my own company where we are working with CSR funds or with Vibha. There are three things that you look for. Number one is, what is the effectiveness of the program that somebody's talking about? like what, we have had a long relationship with Sikshana and Prasanna as well on this, where the effectiveness is important, right? In terms of, is it just a YouTube video where it is a one-way communication? The strongest part in a school education system is the two-way dialogue between the teacher and the student. Creating that is very difficult. So how do you circumvent that, and how do you create that effectiveness of the education, or what is the solution that you're bringing is a big challenge. It's not necessarily there today. I'm saying that that is something that we need to look at, because there are 100 different ideas that people will have, and we'll have to look for those, support those, and then something will click. Something will really become effective. So the effectiveness of the program is number one, what you're looking at. The second one is talking about total cost of ownership. Total cost of ownership means it's the hardware, software, and the maintenance behind it. If it's not just a laptop, and a printer, because these things will have constant updates, or a phone, or a tablet in any way, right? In terms of, if I have a printer, do I have sufficient stack of ink and paper? Because ink is the one that the printer will not break down, paper will run out, and the ink will run out. So how is that being refreshed? So that is a cost that will run. Today I might donate that, it's easy, but the running cost is going to be there. I have a laptop, what is the upgrades that I have? What is the software that's running on it? Do I have the tools? Do I have basic, whatever, in my world, what I would talk about is Microsoft Office, right? And do I have PowerPoint, Excels, all of those things, or something equivalent that is as effective as that, so that that cost is there. There's a certain piece of that cost. So that is also a cost that will add over the years. Something goes bad, the screen breaks, keyboard breaks, battery runs down. 3 years later, most laptop owners, you'll realize that laptop may run. You are going to have a battery problem. You are going to have a keyboard problem, some water spilled, chai spilled, whatever it is. You're also going to run into issues where my hard disk has slowed down, or I've run out of memory. So things will happen. What is that? So that is the total cost of ownership, is what you have to think about, right? And that's where while we were talking about the library program, we were thinking, and this is when we were discussing with Sikshana, I'll give you a very practical example. Our thought was, it should be tablets, right? Remember the discussion. Tablets, why? It's easy, better, think about the usage. What Prasanna told us, yes, tablet is good. However, if something goes wrong, how will you repair it? A phone can be repaired in a much more easier fashion. You go to any shop, they'll be able to replace your screen. A tablet, you can't go. Even in a city like Bangalore, you will have that problem. So that was an eye-opener for us, right, in terms of, so that's total cost of ownership. So those are 2 points. The third piece is, and this is where it starts coming to donors who are not necessarily individuals, but they are companies, they are organizations. Involvement. So if you look at involvement, now how do I get people from my org who could be like, it's like an organization which has, say, this whole room is my organization, let's say. Each one has donated something, and then we finally kind of give it for a program, and we are continuously donating. Their deal is also, right, yeah, I wrote a check. Not all of them, but at least there will be a good 20% of them who will want to be part of it, understand it, feel it, and they want to give their time, their effort, or that satisfaction is brought in. So how do you get that involvement from a program, whatever it might be? So 3 things, and that's what probably each donor is thinking towards today: effectiveness, total cost of ownership, and involvement. So roughly.
Thank you, AB, and it's good to hear that the lens is changing, the perspective is changing from not just one-time giving, but taking the total cost of ownership. I'd like to ask you, Azeez, now your software is on parental engagement, right? So when you designed the product, what were kind of design considerations that you took in order to design it for early childhood, and the kind of parents that you were dealing with, perhaps first generation, children who were first generation learners?
Yeah, that's a great question. We tried a lot of different things, and I think we've distilled some key design principles which we feel work relatively well. I think one thing that we had seen over even before we started, I'd done a lot of work in EdTech before that as well, is that products like Byju's or Topper or things like that, which work or maybe work for the high income, will not work for the low income, right? And these are what are the common considerations, right? These are sort of one-on-one models. A child themselves is going, seeing a computer screen, a tablet, doing some set of things, learning and moving on, right? And that is direct to customer also, right? The school, there's no involvement of the school, of the teacher, or no, often not even of the parents, etc., right? Except for just saying that you can go and do something. Now, I think for us, when we started, I think we saw that for low-income children, especially young children, it's very, very unlikely that they will go, even if they are given that device and that content, they will go and actually start doing stuff on their own and continue to do stuff on their own. Right? They don't have the environment around them, they don't have the confidence themselves to be able to do it. And probably for very young children, they shouldn't even be looking at the screen for very long periods of time. And so I think a lot of the principles was one that I mentioned, right? Can digital activities, digital content trigger physical activities, games, play? That's one. Secondly, the model has to be two-way, right? That if somebody is seeing some content, they are also, and they're responding to it and they're getting feedback, right? So it shouldn't just be one way that I'm consuming content and that is it. I need to get some feedback, I need to do some action, I need to be accountable as a parent, as a teacher, as a child, and I need to get some feedback back on that. So two-way was a very important part of it. The peer group effect of it is extremely critical, we see, right? That normally if you imagine a group of 10 people, maybe out of those, one person might be a little bit more motivated, a little bit more savvy. So if you individually reach 10 people, right, that one person would start engaging with you, but the other 9 would not. Now here what we see in the group is that if that one person starts engaging and sends something back on the group, some activity they've done, the other 9 also see that, look, my neighbor, who I know, who is as educated or as busy or whatever as I am, if they can do it with all the constraints they have, right, that she or he has, then why can't I do it, right? So that influence happens. And then finally, the fact that the teacher is there and is not like just an acquisition channel. A lot of models just say to the teacher that, you get your student to download this app. Right? And often you may bypass the teacher already, sort of completely as well, right? And so here, the principle is that the government school, the government teacher is a respected party. Instead of saying that we are giving something entirely supplementary, unrelated to the government syllabus, curriculum, what they're learning in classrooms, you are actually doing homework, right? And this is a way to actually institutionalize homework in the government school system and help the child do stuff at home that will help them with what they're learning at school, right? So it's not an optional thing, it's a mandatory thing. And so all this framework comes together in something that we call AIM, AIM. A standing for building awareness in the parent and the child. I standing for information, giving them the information that they need to be able to do this stuff in their own context. And M for motivation, right? Often we go to gyms, we know it's important for health, we have access, but we just fall off the wagon because we don't have a peer group around us, we don't have a trainer, we don't have somebody motivating us. So I think those are some of the design principles, and those will not work in every context for every person. So for example, I think this works very well for the earlier grades where even parents can ask the kids to do simple activities, right? And even relatively less educated parents can easily do these simple activities that I've mentioned, whether it's telling a rhyme or a story or doing a game. For grade 10, it may not work, right? And we may need many more advanced softwares that can sort of personalize, adaptive, a lot of these sorts of things. So I think everything has to be in context, but I think some principles of creating community around this, creating a trusted facilitator or using a trusted facilitator, right, and triggering some sort of real-world action, not just looking at a screen. I think those are some principles that are important. We often call these groups digital self-help groups, because we feel self-help groups have done a lot of good, motivating influence on their members. Can you make them digital so that, you're not just reaching them with feet on street once in 20 days, but you're able to touch them daily through some sort of message or nudge.
Thanks, Azeez. I'd like to ask you, Prasanna, next question is, like, what are the adoption challenges in the communities that you're working with, from across the layers, from the, you know the government hierarchy. So reaching the actual child from across that, what would be the adoption challenges? Why I ask this is because, like what you said, Azeez, for a child, teacher is always a trusted partner. So whatever teacher says, the child will go and learn, So communicator has to be the teacher, right? And how do you make that layer to adopt, and what has been your experience across your journey? Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll start from the top
Yeah.
because it's usually the system level, right? Because the department works like that. Right? I mean, even
can't
though we
avoid
talk
it.
about decentralized Namura Shale, we call that, meaning the school is owned by the community at the village level, but the reality is that it is owned by the topmost level. So everything goes from there. So the software, everything also flows similarly. So one of the challenges is that like when we develop certain system level software, basically we had developed something for our own consumption. Like when I was managing our own team and we had, as a proof of concept, we were adopting schools and running our program so that the government can see typically how we all do, right? So we were running about 2,000 schools at that time in 2017 before the government took it over on themselves, the Prerana program. So to manage that, we had to have our own software for our own team. And that software they wanted because they said, I cannot run the program without your accompanying managing software, monitoring software. So give that also. When I tried to give it, then I realized so many challenges because now this has to sit inside state data center, which runs on certain proprietary software, like an Oracle, for example, in Karnataka, whereas we had completely used open source. So if I cannot take open source inside there, and there's a lot of from technical difficulties. And then if I take a licensed version, then who's going to pay? Like Abhi pointed out, long-term fee on all those things. State is not willing to pay. I cannot pay because I don't have that kind of visibility with my donors. So now addressing that itself took us quite some time and some very good bureaucrats at the top to actually make it happen. So anyway, it finally did happen. So that is on one part, right? So you have those issues to deal with. And then like earlier madam was talking about, how easy it is to just give out circulars. So the way the technology actually percolates to the schools is also through circulars. A paper circular will go and say, you have been given access to this portal, please use that. So how does that really happen? I mean, the problem is, I mean, we saw this in real situations when there was a scramble from the teachers community to get used to this using technology in the classroom. So actually, we talk about this, in a lot of negative ways, but one of the biggest positives that if we can look at is that suddenly the teachers became completely, they wanted to learn. And suddenly, it was not in our mandate. Since the schools were closed, I had a good training staff. And so we started training teachers on simple things like Zoom and Google Meet or whatever, and lot of things. How to use YouTube channel, how to create small videos. We did about a few thousand teachers got trained in this process, and we learned quite a bit. So getting a simple thing like this, setting up things is easy, but doing that is the next difficult part. And of course, when it comes to the parents and the children using it at home, I think Azeez was saying, I mean, that's the best approach because, and it works really well in the primary school because you are all asking the parent is to do some simple activity, and which is a non-digital activity, which is completely comfortable for them. And I think we have also tried a very similar approach in our projects on very pilot basis. In fact, yesterday we had a discussion with Andhra IT team and the SPD and all that, where they are trying to adopt this on a larger scale. So instead of the parent, they use called volunteers there. So the volunteers will have a bunch of children, just like a parent and a child. And now volunteerism is going really well, no, but it's not structured enough. So what will the volunteers do when they go there? So using this kind of a channel so that we can actually give volunteers a list of activities like a video or a PDF file or an audio, and just make that volunteers do those activities with the children. And again, so there we are seeing some challenges in that even though the volunteers are fairly well educated and it's just a simple bunch of instructions, I think that getting comfortable with this will take some time. To coming to Ashok, what you were talking about, these changes will not be visible within a few years. I mean, so all these efforts will start showing up, but we need to have some patience while the adoption of technology happens at all the levels, but not give up right away because it sounds like right now the usage sometimes is dismal. I mean, we feel like, oh, we have invested so much, that's where people like, Abhi or Vibha, they need to be more considerate to us because yes, it does look very bad. But if we see that there is some kind of a positive attitude towards it, I think we need to encourage that because sooner or later it will happen and adoption rate will really go up.
So like what we see, like when we do the webinars also, the input that came after the pandemic was that now everyone is familiar with the logging in online and doing the Zoom, right? Which was not otherwise before. When we used to ask, okay, meeting online madbodu agalla, there were so many other resistance questions, right? Now it is seamless.
Yes.
So everything you learn and
Now, in fact, they prefer that actually.
I wanted to add to that because what Prasanna said, right, it does take time. And my observation, or at least what I would tell you, is it will at least take at least one generation or half a generation to actually, for that to percolate. Because there are multiple things that have to fall in place. Number one, like the topic before this, it's the education of the children, right, starting from them, they are familiar with STEM 1, right, or using of technology. Only when these kids who are familiar with using a phone or a tablet or a computer will comes in, when they start becoming teachers, is they kind of also start looking at, hey, I can easily use this. That percolation will take time. The other piece is, I'll give an example. In the medical world, when we were kids or, several others, we were small, if you had to go and take an X-ray, especially when you go into the hospital, the most common thing was you used to use a film. Always was a film. And if you, 15 years ago or 18 years ago, we were in a session with Dr. Devi Shetty. And one of the things that he mentioned was the biggest problem of getting X-ray machines and some of these machines in rural area were two things. The film needed to be reached there regularly. So the stock of film, right? So that was the physical piece. The second one was somebody smart enough to operate that machine, right? Because they needed to they are not smart enough to operate the machine, I correct myself, to take that film and then process it so that it can be now used by a doctor. These two were the challenges. The moment they moved to a filmless X-ray machine, so most of the time today when you go to a hospital to get a X-ray done, it is digital, that the doctor sees digital. It's taken, you go to the doctor is able to pull it up from his or her monitor and see the X-ray. Only when you request you want an actual film, you'll actually get a film. Otherwise, it's not by default printed. It took 17 or 18 years to to percolate. Similarly, we will see that. We just have to be at it. We are at, probably COVID pushed us towards it. And we'll have to kind of see that it'll happen soon.
yeah, thank you, Abhi. So here I'll like to segue a little bit. So like what I view is you have different solutions when it comes to ed tech, right? So there is, last mile connectivity, parental engagement, a content repository like Diksha, or even the infrastructure layer that comes into picture. So not just one vendor, one company, one organization can solve everything that's there in reaching at different layers that we say, whether it is child or teacher or a school, right? So in this, what I would like you to talk about, Abhi, is about collaboration, right? So we spoke about theme of this panel or theme of the day today was sustainable solutions and collaboration between us. And how would you see this, and how, as a donor, what would you look, promote this? Yeah.
So if you look at, right, today's event itself is a collaboration event, right? And Vibha, as an organization, we support several programs and several partners. And there are some here with Prasanna, there are some in the audience as well. And what we feel is, and we also felt for the last several years, last 10 years actually, that bringing people together for discussion helps each organization, because each organization, how they started is with passion, and they have their strong strengths. They are very good at what they do, and there are certain others who also have certain strengths but also have figured out a good partnership model. So how does partner A learn from partner B is one aspect of that learning, and that is a collaboration effort, right? In terms of Prasanna has a great connect with the entire bureaucratic levels in Karnataka and with other states as well. So how can other organizations learn how to build that? That's a skill that it's an art, right? You talk to the people and then you learn and say, okay, this is what I'll have to do. Also use the connects, but also you'll have to build your own relationships. That's one piece of it. That's the collaboration. The other one is there are several organizations that are complementary. How does that complement work with two organizations so that when you go to a state government, you kind of say, hey, this is what I bring to the table, and this is what the other person brings to the table. I think those are two aspects of collaboration that we need to always look at. That is what will help us, move the yardstick forward.
So with this as a discussion between me asking the question, I'd conclude here, but I would open the audience to ask any questions if you have. So you can raise your hand and we'll bring the mic towards you. Yes, sir.
Hello. Good afternoon, sir. Myself, I am Sudhindra, director of this company, Chrysalis IMAX India Private Limited. My question is more of generic nature regarding technology. See, very recently, Google has come up with a chat GPT where teaching and learning becomes somewhat redundant. If a child, some student is asked to do some homework, you just go there, the best of best homework comes there. Technology is a double-edged sword, actually. So how far are we leading? How far this technology is leading? Whether it is really teaching something, it is a double-edged sword. It can go this way, that way. So I would like the panel to throw some light on this part, sir. Thank you.
I'll answer that as a parent, okay? I have two teenage kids. I have 17 and 14, and whenever they're given homework, the first thing, and forget about ChatGPT, it's even with the Google days, right? Or Wikipedia. The first thing is they're given, hey, write one essay or write 500 words on this topic. So the simplest one several years ago was go to Google or go to Wikipedia, cut, paste, and that's it, you're done. Then I started seeing a note come in the homework thing. Google search or Wikipedia cut paste will not be allowed, right? Because the teachers started becoming smarter. They started saying, you know what? I see 5 kids, 10 kids copy, give the same thing. It's either they've copied or they got from one source. So teachers will also become smarter, and they will push that boundary. So, and in our, when I was a kid, obviously we didn't have Google or anything that way, right? Copying was the easiest one. There's a smart kid and how do I copy it? And then there were people who were even smarter. They will take the smart kid's work and change it so that it looks slightly different. They were the smarter ones, right? They were the lazy ones. But you will find a balance in the system, in my opinion, that will come to. I don't know, Prasanna, you have seen this longer, so.
No. So, I mean, exactly, I have a 17-year-old too, so it's a constant struggle. While at one time we understand the power of technology, at the same time, there are two things, right? One is, as a teacher, when we do talk to teachers, I mean, a lot of times when I address the teachers, especially on technology, I tell them, let us not make the technology as some kind of either a very good or a very bad, influence on our learning. Because either extremes is going to be, they're not going to believe us if we start talking like that. So, whether it is with my daughter or the teachers, when I tell them, like, look, it is available. You can read it up once if you want. If you are trying to learn what is there, you can always do that. But it will help you if you start writing your own sentences. It's not, so it's going to be a long struggle. And like Abhi said, it's going to be, cat and mouse game. And, it's always going to be like that. And no matter how smart we parents or, elders think that we are, the kids will always find a way to, outsmart us. So it's going to be that. But I think in the long run, I think it's not going to be hurtful at all. I think it's going to develop a different kinds of thinking, because I don't know whether our way of learning things and using that knowledge to do something is effective anymore, versus I know I need to get something done, and I look up what are the different ways of doing it, learn quickly within no time, and then try to solve the problem. I mean, maybe we are on that kind of a trend. Who knows? I mean, we are in that, caught in that generation gap maybe. So it will be difficult, I think, for us to accept for some time, but we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, thank you, Prasanna and Devi. Any other questions? Yes, please. Yeah. Sir has questions. Yeah, go ahead, ma'am.
Just curious to know, using technology to spark joy of learning. Can you give some field examples or ideas? It will help us.
Yeah, I think definitely. I think I mean, there are all sorts of advanced ways that you could do it, right? People talk about advanced technology, for example, learning coding using these simple softwares, ready to use softwares that you can do and so on. So all of Scratch, etc., right? Or using AR, VR. So, I mean, there are many complicated things of this sort that will help. But I think even simple things like, for example, in a classroom, in a primary or pre-primary classroom, the teacher has been doing some particular set of activities with the class for the last 3 months. Right? She knows those things. She knows 5 rhymes. She's repeated those already 2 times, and she's doing some games which she's repeated 3 times. Right? So then, if you can even use technology to give them simple suggestions of some new things that they can do. Right? Again, not requiring anything from outside, but using what they already have. I think that itself sparks a lot of joy of learning, and that's what we see very, very frequently actually. That teachers are happy to say that we've got a new rhyme, we have got a new activity, and the kids are saying that okay, we are getting a new experience in the classroom. In fact, we used to work only with parents. We started working after schools reopened post-COVID. We started working with teachers to give them activities to do, because we started seeing that the teachers were on the same groups as the parents. They were starting to do those homework activities in the classroom itself. Right, so that gave us the insight that look, it's not as if the teachers know everything. Right, the more interested ones are actually using these themselves, and so then we created this program. Right, so I think that's one example, right, of teachers and parents sort of expanding their horizons and the sort of things that the kids are doing for the joy of learning.
Yeah, reminded me to very early stages of when I got into Sikshana. So we got one IT company in Whitefield donate some old laptops, because at those days buying new laptops to schools was unheard of. So they said we'll give some old laptops. So we went and collected it. At the time of collecting, the senior engineer was there. The director over, and we opened it up, and I could realize that it was definitely usable, but not really. It's about 5-year-old, and it was not very easily usable. It was running Windows 2000 actually on that, so it's going to be tough for me to actually. But while I was packing things up, they were asking, so what kind of impact can we see in the children? And I'm like scratching my head. The village I was planning to take it to was Arikere in Kanakpura, and with this, what came to my mind was, look, one thing I can guarantee, this school has absolutely no technology, computers, anything like that. So this will be an excellent, table model for motivation. They said, what do you mean? So one thing it can guarantee do is, enrollment will go up in that school, attendance will go up, because there is a laptop in my school now. And this is a true story. Just because of the laptop, we had amazing things happening. Actually, from that school, Arikere, Vibha was funding that in the early days. We have fantastic students coming out. One Basuraj, I think you may be aware of that. His handiwork on those laptops. He's a creative director in the Kannada Sandalwood, right? Yeah, Sandalwood. And we have another engineer from there, Mahesh, who is actually a software engineer working with us now, coming from the same school. So that really happens. Okay, so that it definitely will trigger that in the children, especially in a school which is looked at as having nothing to offer. Suddenly, a technology device will do that. There is one more thing that I would like to share is on something. I think next is the assessment. The panel. So there are different. So this relates to assessment also. So what we had done was, one donor wanted us to be extremely clear on measuring the reading fluency in the child. And that was very important to them because they were funding this. So I was like, how do we, because it's so subjective and it's very difficult to figure out what is fluency and all those things. But then being a techie, thought of a technical solution to this. We created a simple app on the Windows laptop those days, where a paragraph would come all randomized, 200 paragraphs were there, ASR level, various levels, and the paragraph would come and the child reads it. During the reading of the paragraph, the camera will switch on. The child will be looking at itself also, and it records only for a few seconds, and then it ships that file back to the server, so I can do random checks on fluency. That was the purpose. But what happened in reality was, when we went to the school, the teacher said, this is the best thing you have done for us. Why? Because the kids were motivated to go and just read in front of the camera. They had no fear of anybody judging them. All they knew was, if they don't complete that paragraph within that time, the screen will close. Because I had given this paragraph request 2 minutes to read. It closes. So their motivation was, I am going to finish reading this before it closes. So that became a kind of huge, it was an assessment tool, turned it itself into a motivation. So it's really strange how when we think, so technology, I think, can trigger a lot of joy in learning the entire process. It's up to us how we use it, creatively within that environment that we are in.
Any other questions? We have one last question, please.
Piroja Mehta from Impact. We run an NGO, and this is for primary education. And my current request and urgent need is for teaching English in very remote rural India, where nobody talks English, no shopkeeper, nothing, there's no English newspaper, and we desperately need a solution for teaching English, because I know all state governments are saying there's no need to teach English, but all children and all parents want to, and I would want them to learn English. If my children didn't know English, if the government bureaucrats' children went to local Kannada medium school, I can understand this requirement, but their children go abroad, it's not fair to say no English. So can you give me some suggestions?
Unfortunately, I don't have an answer. You might have one.
There is an organization called Leap Forward, right? In terms of, maybe we can actually put you in touch with them on that. We can definitely do that.
Yeah.
Is technology enabled?
Yes, it is technology enabled.
But I'm very remote.
You're in which state?
All across North India.
Okay, we'll figure out. We can talk separately. Yeah, I'll put you in touch.
Yeah. One last question.
Yeah, I am Ajit from Samavesh Bhopal. I have a question. In the last session, we have talked about some constructing knowledge.
Correct.
And in your experiences and activity you mentioned some activities which is also talking about the constructing knowledge. My question is, we are talking about the fast-paced technology in the domain of education. Does it will create obstacle in constructing knowledge in that process, or it is just a fear? The children and community will derive something from the environment, and the knowledge construction will continue in different way, maybe, and maybe not. So what is your views on that?
Yeah, I'll quickly address that. In my view, I think it depends on how you use technology, like any other thing, right? And similarly, for example, if a teacher stands in front of a classroom, there's no technology, and she's giving a lecture, right? That's also not helping the audience construct knowledge. It's not allowing for inquiry-based learning, etc. But if she, say, organizes them in particular groups, does some sets of activities in their context, then it helps to construct knowledge. I think technology can be used very similarly, right? If you just digitize the talking head of a teacher and present that video. For example, I feel a lot of Khan Academy videos even are like that, right? Where you're just watching some video and that's it. I don't think that's constructing knowledge, but if you can set it up in many other different ways using basic technology, advanced technology, and that could really help. So I think it's really on how you use it.
So we'll end this session.
Just add one point,
sure.
because it's a live example. We are talking, technology in rural India, all these things are okay. It puts us in a different context, and we see a lot of challenges. For a few years, I was fortunate while running Sikshana, I was based out of US for some time, and then I was auditing schools in South LA. where a lot of money was invested in terms of IT infrastructure. Okay, everything was set up, lot of content, everything was there. Each child had one Chromebook or whatever iPad. In this kind of an environment, the teacher was setting up a lesson plan, completely digitized lesson plan. It was all set up. And I was there too, as part of the Google intervention, to figure out why they are not able to use. That was my whole auditing that thing. And actually I saw this, why it happens, because this content, the teacher so cleverly put it all together, prepared for it for an hour before the class. And as soon as the class started, one boy coughed and without covering his mouth. And then suddenly one other small, this was a 4th grade class. Other girl suddenly said, he coughed without. And then the teacher says, so what do you do now? So he went and washed his hand and he came back. And then that led to a series of things. And before we knew, they went on to talk about Ebola, which was at that time very prevalent. And all of these things happened. And the class was over. The PowerPoint was, it was not even switched on. At the most learning, and this whole class was actually about viruses and bacteria, actually. So, just because we have technology, just because we have this, and I was prepared for it, and if the teacher was hell-bent on doing that, I think that would have been a disaster. But allowing the situation to drive, so that is where I think some of the, at least when I talk to the bureaucracy here, I tell them, look, while don't get too worked up about monitoring. Like, let us give the tools to the teachers, but don't try to monitor too much about, did they actually use the GK kit, or did they actually use, they will use it if they don't get worked up over, because then you will destroy this kind of line. So it's depends, I guess.
Yeah. Thank you so much, all of you, Azeez, Prasanna, and Ebi, for being part of this panel and part of this today's discussion. So in conclusion, I'd just like to say that there are still several adoption challenges of using technology in classroom across the layers. But when we design the product, we have to keep the last mile in our head, and how do we reach out to that last child who is there. And what we have learned, and what even Sikshana echoes, is using open source software, so that we are not dependent on any one vendor, one licensing that happens to reach the last child out there, right? So there are still, it is evolving, and technology never is stagnant. So we have to keep ourselves updated, and as educators and as learners ourselves, it is an evolving field, right? So one-time investment will not work. It has to be taught as a total cost of ownership to make change happen. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you all of you. Thanks.